PLD. PJ Campbell. 2 mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are 2 mediocre white dudes on film.
Dun, dun,
What?
dun. I made a noise. It was better than saying a word, but I made a noise up front because I was like, that'll be entertaining for everyone.
Right.
Well, maybe not. Maybe just me. But it was very entertaining.
It entertained enough for me. We always kind of do that with the ending of that. We both kind of lean forward and see who's going to say something first. What are we going to say first? How are we going to introduce ourselves? You always come through.
I always come through. You've tried to catch me off guard too. Like you've tried to get me like having food or like drinking things. No, you can't catch me off guard. I'm always going to like lean forward and be prepared for it.
Well, that's because you're a trained professional, my friend. You're a trained professional.
Trained moron, maybe. Trained undergraduate. Trained simpleton.
You were a super simpleton. It's okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
look, there's a reason that this podcast is still called 2 Mediocre White Dudes. I embrace all forms of mediocrity, yes. Including and especially aimed at myself.
That sounds like the sequel to Idiocracy, Mediocrity.
Honestly, we should probably just make a movie called Mediocrity.
I'm all for that. I like this. Let's
Can David Harbour be the lead?
Oh yes, absolutely.
I'm on a weird David Harbour high, coming off of Violent Night.
I just saw Violent Night this morning.
I know you did. I'm aware. You know why? Because you texted me that you were going.
That's true. I did do that, didn't I?
Yeah, so I'm aware. I am over the moon about Violent Night still.
Yes, me too.
I have not stopped thinking about it since I saw it, and it was so nice because I'm going to be honest. I've had no Christmas spirit. I still really don't right now. I'm going to be honest. Like I'm having a real hard time with the holiday season this year. Like not really doing it for me. But seeing a drunken, run down Santa played by David Harbour kicking ass and taking names, I felt seen.
Yeah, it just worked for you. Yeah, I get it.
It worked for me. It just worked for me.
I mean, I like John Leguizamo as well, so it was a good combination of the two of them.
Yeah.
I will say one negative thing I had about the film.
The family.
Negative thing. No, it's not even that. It's a dumb, stupid thing.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because I genuinely kind of hated the family throughout, which I think is kind of the point also. Yeah. But Trudy was great and like elevated that nonsense.
Yeah, Trudy was great. The family, I didn't really give a shit about the family the entire time. It's more about, to me, is about just the two, Leguizamo on one side and David Harbour on the other. Of course, and Leguizamo's sidekicks or henchmen were all pretty funny.
You mean Matty Gunner?
Yes, Matty Gunner. Exactly, that's who it is. It is Matty Gunner.
Dude, I was not joking when I sent that to the chat. I was like, hey, Matty, really loved you in Violent Night because that dude looks exactly like Matty Gunner, who's on this channel.
Really, really did, and I was all for that. No, my negative thing about Violent Night is a very small, simple thing. It's the fact that these kind of movies for me, I live for the stupidest, cheesiest one-liners you can imagine. Make me guffaw. I just love to lean into that. And one of them that I was looking forward to because I saw it in the trailer wasn't in the movie. It was "It's time for season's beatings" line.
I was waiting for that too.
I kept waiting for that.
Yeah.
And it didn't appear, and I kind of got sad about it because I just love that. I mean, I guess we have it in the trailer, so it's someone's one thing, but I wanted it in the movie as well.
I guess too. It also was not lost on me that the movie both references Die Hard within itself because one of the presents he pulls out of the bag is a copy of Die Hard on Blu-ray.
Yes, indeed.
And he uses it and he like tosses it to the side, and then Trudy won't shut up about the fact that she just watched Home Alone.
Right.
And I was so enamored with the fact that we had like a proper Home Alone film that was rated R in some capacity with a little kid. And that is not to say that like I like Dial Code Santa or whatever other name it is also called. It was a movie that came out roughly around the same time. It's from another country. The first time I ever saw it was Last Drive-In, actually. Joe Bob did it for one of the Christmas specials a couple of years ago. I think it was the one during COVID, and that was right around the time I had gotten like really back into watching it. And I was on a Zoom call with Tim Franco and a couple of others, and we watched it, and it was the first time I'd ever seen it. And I liked the movie, but the thing about that movie is that it is not like fun and lighthearted. It is a very serious version of Home Alone, which makes it like
that's fun.
Yeah, it's not nearly as fun, which leads to like there's a dog death in the movie that I do not like because it is a serious movie. And that's why like I tweeted that I thought it was like Home Alone but rated R now, and I kind of got a pushback on this. Well, there's the one that exists, and it's like, yes, but sure, if you want to say that, but like Home Alone is very specific in tone.
Yeah,
there's no R-rated Home Alone. There's not, and until now, and that's kind of the thing I was trying to get across. Like, tonally, it is not the same. That is like saying Snakes on a Plane is the same as Air Force One.
Yeah,
they are
completely different.
Yeah, they are. Yes, they are both set on a plane.
Yes, they both have bad guys in a plane and a good guy. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like 100%. Like tonally speaking, this was exactly. It was a fun R-rated Halloween. I mean, it sounds weird when you're saying, "Oh, it's fun to watch guys get like clawed or getting a big nail through the jaw, or stepping on nails, or like those." How's that fun? But it is the tone is done in a simple way where you laugh at the bad guys. It's done over the top comically, the bowling balls on the head and things like that. I mean, these things are like things that were like in any other movie, like some of the things they would have knocked the people out for the whole, like they would have been done after one shot. But because it's like a cartoonish thing like that, you're like, okay, we get it. We're going to continue with it.
And I gotta say, like the whole movie is cartoonishly violent in the best way.
Which is why for me those cheesy lines work. That's like in that kind of situation, those cheesy one-liners make the most sense and they fit properly.
Oh, totally. And I liked that Beverly D'Angelo was in it. I actually forgot she was in it, and I spent like the first 10 minutes of the movie when she had appeared going, wait, what?
Right.
I was trying to put together who it was because it's been a little bit since I've seen her.
Same. No, same. Same thing.
So, but her voice sounds enough alike how she used to sound that I kept going, I know who that is.
Right.
And then it clicked with me and I went, oh my God.
That is.
And it was kind of a nice nod to the fact that Christmas Vacation and the dysfunction of their own family in that. And so I don't know if that was necessarily on purpose, but it made me happy.
Absolutely.
I'm such a Christmas Vacation fan.
Which I'm going to transition real quick and we can go back to Violent Night. That's actually a good segue, though, a little bit to talk about the fact that
this whole thing was for you to segue into what we were going to have to be talking about. That's part of why I was doing it. But now you made it a lot less exciting because now you cut me off like midway.
Well, I got excited. I got a little excited about it because I was thinking to myself, should we calm down? All right. Should we not talk about it? Should we talk about it? We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. In 2 weeks, 2 weeks' time, we are going to put a pause on our Final Destination walkthrough.
Only for an episode.
For one episode. That's right, for one episode. Because it is.
Only for one.
It is the holiday season. And
is it?
As a well, it seems like it. It feels like it's
everyone keeps saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the calendar says. As a request by my wife Kim, who never really gives a shit about what I do as far as podcasting goes. She barely knows I podcast except for the shit quiet.
Blamer, have you seen how we act or listen to us? I feel awful for the people who listen to us.
She's like, "What the hell are you doing? Whatever, you're out of my hair for an hour and a half, so that's fine by me." That's what it is.
Lowballing.
But she came over at one point and said, "I would like to see you do a top 10 Christmas movie list for one of your shows." And I said, I could make that happen. I think PJ would be into it enough. I think we could make that work. So we're going to make it work in 2 weeks. So. The format hasn't been decided yet necessarily. We might include some picks from Jarvie and Gunner, but we will have a Christmas themed episode of Two Mediocre White Dudes on Christmas, at least for that week.
Two mediocre white dudes under the mistletoe.
There you go.
How romantic.
Yeah, that's something, all right. I don't know if I
Yeah,
ever would want
that's
to see that, but
no,
that's yeah, I don't, not
uh,
sure.
no.
But
It's
I
bad.
actually wonder if this movie doesn't make the list. Who knows? I mean, it's hard to say because it's so recent.
It's too recent. I don't know if I could arguably put it. Do I want to? Sure, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong, but I think that there still needs to be like a
you gotta let
moratorium
it.
of time.
Yeah, before
You
you
know what
can't
I
put it
mean?
this year.
Until
Yeah,
I can put it on a top. It's a weird thing, right? Like, there's a lot of people talking about that sight and sound list that went around
yes,
recently, and there's been a lot of talk about that. And I sat down and thought about what I would do if I was to do a top 10 movies for this sight and sound list.
right.
And I managed to be like, I will not put anything that is younger than 10 at least.
I get that. I completely
You know what I
understand that.
mean? And
Yeah.
so that way, not that it has to do with the Christmas thing, but that's kind of what I mean is like I had to, even in my mind, I put down this like line in the
Mhm.
sand where I was like, don't get me wrong, there was at least one movie from that is it's almost a decade old now. It's
Mhm.
not quite there, but I would have put it there if I could have. But I put that line in the sand for myself. And that movie is Steve Jobs, by the way. If I could
Oh,
have put one movie from the 2010s, it would have been Steve Jobs.
okay.
Um, I just think that that movie structurally is one of the most interesting movies that's ever made. I think that Fassbender's fucking incredible in it. The score is amazing, and it was really interesting seeing Danny Boyle take a Sorkin script and do something. I actually think it's better than The Social Network
Interesting.
for a lot of reasons, including the fact that at least Steve Jobs didn't almost destroy the country. I actually would be interested in a Social Network sequel involving what happened
After the fact,
after.
yeah.
I would have been very curious to see like because the first one's already kind of a courtroom drama. So then
Yep.
like take that to Capitol Hill and like let's see him going through the process of like look at what your thing became.
Right. Very
Um,
interesting.
you know what I
I mean,
mean?
there's been talk about that at one point or another. They've mentioned possible sequels to it at some point or another, but I don't. It's never really got off the ground completely. I just don't think Fincher is the one who's going to come back and.
That's why. And I honestly I'm just like give it to Boyle.
Yeah,
Let Boyle
maybe.
do it.
Yeah,
Like he knocked the hell out of Steve Jobs, in my opinion. So
be interesting to see for sure. But
I
I
don't know.
get your argument about the line in the sand, and I was going to say the same thing about this. Like I just kind of threw out Christmas out there as a not even as a joke, but as like I say, would it possibly make it? And I don't know. I would do the same thing, like that and Spirited, which I actually enjoyed quite a bit this
Yeah,
year, this season
Spirited's
as
very
well.
good.
But I would not also put on a list. But that's why we have honorary mentions, and that's why I might put it on honorary mentions just to kind of talk
I
about it
mean,
because
that's
it's
a
not as
fair
well.
honorary mention at this point, especially like being as new as it is. That movie is surprisingly very, like I said, just like very fucking fun. I
Yeah,
had a big old grin on my face. Also,
all the
it's
time.
like shockingly violent.
It is. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It is
It,
shockingly at times. Yeah.
yeah, and not in like a John Wick way, in a
Right.
slasher movie sort of way. Like
Yeah.
it's gory as shit.
It really is.
I
Oof.
was shocked. I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, "What the fuck, man?" Like I was just kind of taken aback because I should have known. The dude who directed this did the Dead Snow movies, the
Right.
one with the Nazi zombie things,
Right. Right.
which is a crazy fucking movie. If you've never seen Dead Snow, please see it. It's remarkably crazy.
Yeah.
But I was not anticipating it, and the third act is so fucking bonkers that by the time it was over, I was like grinning ear to ear, but I was also finding myself going, "Holy shit, like how did
Yeah.
they get away with that?"
There's some moments in there you're just kind of like, wow. Okay, this is what you're doing. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Harbor is going to join the Great Santas on film though.
Oh, I agree, 100%. I hope we get a sequel from this one. This seems like it could be actually be a season, like a trilogy or a series that could actually work done properly. Because you could have
I
so many
mean,
different things.
yeah, done properly, I wouldn't mind it to be honest. But you have to find a story to tell with it
Yeah.
for obvious reason. Like, you couldn't just do it again just to do it again.
Right, because the problem would be, not no spoilers really, but David Harbour's Santa does have an arc of
Yeah,
sorts.
yeah.
But I think you could put him. I think he could be the changed Santa, but still get into some kind of violent altercation for whatever reason it happens, kind of thing.
I dream of a sequel where, like, what happened that night becomes like its own legend almost,
Yeah,
and then it becomes like a whole thing.
I think the story when we never met. Again, I can say this is not really spoilers. We never met Mrs. Claus. We heard
I
about Mrs.
actually was
Claus.
waiting for that.
Yeah, I was waiting for like a big cameo at the end or something where we'd see
Yeah.
somebody do that. So I think that's might be the
I
way to
honestly
go.
thought it was gonna be Winona Ryder. I'm not
I
gonna lie
would
to you.
absolutely that would have been great. That would have been perfect.
I thought for sure, and the only reason I say this, spoiler alert for a movie that's I guess it's older at this point, and it has its own sequel, but the first Christmas Chronicles, when we finally met Mrs. Claus, the funny thing was because Kurt Russell was playing him, they got Mrs. Kurt Russell
Right.
in Goldie Hawn
Which
to
makes
play
sense.
Mrs. Claus, which was so smart. And then they really leaned on that and let Goldie Hawn co-lead the sequel.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good way. It was a good thing to do.
Oh man,
Um,
what if we saw Mr. and Mrs. Claus fighting side by side together in a movie, like
right.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
That's what I'm thinking. Something like that. Either do that
Now I
or
really need it to be Winona Ryder.
yeah. Or you can go the other route at first. Maybe somehow that's what makes him be violent again. Something happens, but it's not that anything
No,
happens. So
don't do that. We're not. We are civilized individuals. We are not gonna put unless you're trying to really riff on Die Hard again.
that's what I'm thinking of.
Jesus You know what? It picks up that same night, and he gets back to the North Pole,
Right.
and terrorists have taken over the North Pole.
That's exactly it. That's what I'm thinking. And he's
So
like,
you're thinking of the movie Santa versus the terrorists or whatever from inside
Scrooge.
Scrooge.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm thinking.
Lee
There you go.
Majors.
We'll start Lee Majors. Exactly. It's exactly what I'm thinking. We're now on the same wavelength. And
Jesus
Mrs.
Christ.
Claus will help. Mrs. Claus can help from the inside because they think they have her like under wraps, but they don't. They think they
Under
do
wrap?
not know what to
Really?
do.
Really?
You
You're
like what I
using
said?
a rapping joke?
You like what I said there? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad you picked that one up.
I get it because it's Christmas time. It's the North Pole.
It
They
is.
make presents there. They have to wrap them. I see what you're putting down.
Thank you.
That,
Yeah,
very clever of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
that's what I'm here for.
But yes, that will be taking place. We will do the Christmas list. We have a bunch of Christmas movies that I'm going to put on that list. I know there's movies that you're going to put on that list. It should be a very interesting list for sure.
I don't think it's going to be as different as anyone would anticipate from us.
Could I? Yeah. I mean, there might be those a few of the, let's say, alternative Christmas movies. I always say
So I'm going to ask you:
on air.
are you putting A Nightmare Before Christmas, or The Nightmare Before Christmas, rather, or do you consider it a Halloween movie?
I've always considered it both.
Me too. Okay.
Why not be on both?
I mean, it's clearly very much more Christmassy, obviously, because it's about like the meaning of Christmas.
right.
But
It can fit both holidays, and there's no reason why it shouldn't. It has things from both, so why not have it in both? There's no law against some movie being both a Halloween movie and a Christmas
that movie is my personality personified.
Halloween and Christmas together at the same time.
Yeah, except I'm becoming more like Bill Murray in Scrooge, which is probably a problem.
There's a spoiler, by the way. Scrooge will definitely be on my list.
Oh, I am shocked by this revelation.
Aren't
Just
you?
like totally blindsided by this.
I'm sure you are. That's one of my favorites.
It's one of mine too, actually, to be fair. As you're aware, the great Karen Allen is in that movie.
Oh God, yeah.
And she's
Bobcat
so
Goldthwait is in that movie and does well.
Well, dude, okay, look, you say that like Bobcat Goldthwait isn't like amazing in everything.
But
Goldthwait is
didn't
amazing.
expect him. Always. Well, I remember when I first saw that movie, I didn't expect him to be that character at first. So
his voice,
yeah, exactly. But it was like a normal character for him, kind of at first, and like I don't know, but he definitely took it and ran with it, which was good.
Now I want to rewatch Hercules because it's been a little while. Because I really love him in that. We should, down the line, we don't do a lot of like list things here, but like Disney henchmen. Not Disney villains,
Ooh,
Disney henchmen,
henchman. Okay.
because like there are quite a few,
Oh yeah,
and a lot of them are fun.
absolutely. I'm all down for that at some point.
And I would have to give Pain and Panic, like, they have to go together because you can't, like, Pain and Panic are the henchmen together.
Right. I'm excited about this because honestly speaking, it's funny because I mean, I've done class action for a while, as you know, with me and Jarvie and Gunner, and
You keep bringing up that Jarvie dude.
I know. You guys reached accounting at one point. You guys reached the chord at one point for a little bit, just
Yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah.
So, but we always kind of wanted to do stuff that was like against the not against the format, but different things every once in a while that broke the format. But it always seemed weird breaking the format of that show specifically. Whereas doing like lists on this show feels like it's just fine because all we're doing really is reviewing movies here and there. So every once in a while having a list show doesn't feel like it's betraying the concept of two mediocre white dudes on film.
It
So
just it's pretty much part of the course. We're
right,
mediocre, and if we decide we don't want to talk about a movie, even though, look, let's be real, people are tuning in to talk or to hear us talk about Final Destination 2 right now.
that's
We're
right.
like 20 minutes into this at this point, and we have not gotten even close to that
We have said
because
the words Final Destination at least once. That's
just
about
now.
it. I said it once earlier on, I think. But
Oh, okay, so we've said it twice then.
yes,
Great.
there you go.
But it's just really funny to me because now I think about it, and it's like, no, that's part of the course for everything we do.
Pretty
Like,
much.
it's no different than any of the rest. So we could do it, and it would be fun. I just
Yeah,
Disney henchmen is like, or just movie henchmen. Like
yeah.
odd. I mean, look, then you get to talk about Odd Job or Jaws.
Oh God,
Like, I
yeah.
mean, the Bond movies that alone are
Have
worth
that.
talking about. The henchmen.
Oh, 100%. Oh God, greatest henchman of all time. That's definitely a list we can get behind.
You know, I just rewatched Casino Royale. By the way, we don't
Best
talk
Bond
enough.
movie of all time.
Yeah, of all time. We don't talk enough about how it is not only the best Bond movie, but that movie is like actually just a really great movie. It's one of the best movies of the 2000s, like
Yeah.
easily hands down.
Oh yeah,
Uh that movie fucking rules. It is
it
almost
does.
20 years old, and it holds up like so well.
It could be released this year. It would be just fine. 100%.
100%.
I always
100.
feel like a Bond conversation between you and me would be really fun because neither of us are like super uber Bond fans, but we do appreciate the franchise. But if we were going to do the Bond franchise, I think we'd break it up into
You'd have
bits
to do it by not decade,
by
by
Bond.
Bond,
We do the
which
Bond. We take a
which
break and then
leaves
come back, and then we
George Lazenby in his like one-off, which it's a good movie.
right. It
It's
is.
a really good movie. It's one of my favorites, actually.
It's up there for me. It's at least mid level, if not higher.
Oh, it's top 10 easy for me. I would say it's top 5 easy for me.
I have to go back and check how I ranked it. I only watched it. I did a Bond watch through like a year or two ago, 2 years ago,
Sure.
and I did it all at once. And a lot of those honestly were first time views because I was never a huge Bond fan growing up. I remember the Timothy Dalton ones coming out. I think I watched them back then, but not very well. And I remember, of course, the Pierce Brosnan ones I saw at the theaters, but I was never a huge Pierce Brosnan's Bond fan anyway. I kind of didn't really understand. Casino Royale really won me over again back in the day. But because I watched so many in a row, they do flow together in my head a little bit. So I'm not even sure. I do remember liking Lazenby though. I did like Lazenby and wanted to see
I
him come
think
back for
he's
more.
fine, but I think the movie itself is great.
Right.
Its editing is like super ahead of the time for the way that the action scenes are. If you go back
Yeah.
and watch it, it's like really shockingly kinetic.
Right. Right.
That's a good fucking movie. I remember when a lot of us thought that No Time to Die was actually going to start and kind of be like a proto remake of it
Right.
because they were bringing back oh man, I totally blanked on her name. His girlfriend
Oh, the girlfriend. Yeah.
of Spectre, whose name is escaping me, and she's a very good actress.
Yes, she is.
Uh,
Our movie trivia game has gone down since we had to stop reading questions.
it's probably better.
It's probably better for it.
I keep wanting to say Alicia Vikander, and I know
No, no,
that's
no,
wrong.
no, no, no. It's Leah Seydoux.
Thank you, Leah
There it
Seydoux.
is.
Yeah.
Leah Seydoux.
So, like, I honestly thought that they were, but again, like as my joke from earlier about we have come too far, but it's also kind of true. Like, fridging a woman
Right.
for a character's growth is
Right.
like so backwards now.
Agreed.
in a lot of ways. So I would have loved to see the movie start or even be like a proto remake of that. But ultimately, I'm glad it wasn't, because it still leaves On Her Majesty's Secret Service as like the one movie where Bond finally finds happiness only to have it ripped away outside of Casino
Right.
Royale.
Right. Right.
So it's almost shocking how much Casino Royale pulls from that movie too.
That's true.
I
That's
really
very
want to
true.
rewatch On Her Majesty's Secret Service now because it's been a little bit.
Yeah. I'm gonna save it because I have a feeling we will do the Bond movies at one point, like some of them, maybe when Bond gets
Also,
rebooted.
I watched like the Connery movies on repeat as a kid.
Yeah.
We had them on VHS. I used to watch them a lot.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, the Connery ones, and then of course, like I saw Goldeneye and Tomorrow Never Dies and The World's Not Enough in theaters, and I was young, but like
Right.
it wasn't until Craig that I finally like really, really fell in love with the franchise again. Like I always liked the franchise,
Right.
but it was mostly the Sean Connery part of the franchise. Like I didn't love the more stuff.
Right.
I like it now, but as a
Yeah.
kid,
I liked the more stuff a lot when I watched through it I mean,
it's just
it's
different.
it's very different. It gets sillier as it goes on. At some points, it's kind of funny how it transitions. It starts like Roger Moore's first outing was like serious enough, but like the more he gets through, he gets like more and more silly and more silly. By the time it gets to like his last one, The View to a Kill, that's when it like jumped the shark, went a little just too far as far as the silliness goes. It didn't help also that he was a lot older at that point. It just didn't seem. It almost seemed like a parody of itself at that point.
Yeah, which is so funny when you consider the fact that Connery himself comes back like just a couple years before that and does
Mhm.
Never Say Never Again. And that one also is like kind of comical in a capacity because Connery doesn't even look like he should be there.
Right, that's true.
I actually I do not care for Never Say Never Again. I also do not care for Thunderball, really. So it's not shocking to me that
Oh,
the one
interesting.
that's like the remake of itself is one I do not care for.
That's fair. Okay, interesting because they're both top 10 for me. Never Say Never Again, Thunderball. They're both top 10 for me. Interestingly
I am
enough.
very happy for you. I could not disagree with you more. I'm not going to say that Thunderball is like an all-time terrible Bond movie, but I also, as you are very aware, I can't believe this has turned into a James Bond conversation.
I know.
I do not care for some of the more popular entries that are like more universally loved, and I don't mean that in a I'm trying to be edgy and hip sort of way. I just think that every time one of them like enters the zeitgeist in a very specific capacity and people latch onto it, it's for like the wrong reasons.
I agree. I agree.
Which is why Skyfall drives me fucking bonkers because I actually think Skyfall is like not a very good James Bond movie.
And again, I will
It's
heavily
better.
disagree with you on that, but that's okay.
It is no, it's a good Christopher Nolan Batman movie. It's a terrible Bond movie.
We can have a discussion on that later on. We also have a discussion on your misguided love for Quantum of Solace as well.
Hey, you know what, man? History is going to prove me right. And Tim Franco, for that matter. Tim and I have been on this train for the longest. I saw that movie 3 times its opening weekend.
I saw the movie 3 times in its opening weekend, probably because I fell asleep every time I watched it, so I had to restart
You
it.
are out of your mind, sir.
I'm...
You are out of your mind. Quantum is super fun. And of all the movies to come out of the writer's strike, other than Star Trek, that is one of the best. All right, man. Go watch X-Men Origins Wolverine and continue telling me that you're cool with that. Yeah.
I don't know. That's nothing to do with that. I don't like X-Men.
Oh no, it does because it's the writer's strike thing that I just brought up.
Yeah, but that's yeah.
Oh no. You go ahead and sit there and keep making fun of the movie that you think is so bad and boring. You know what? Go ahead and enjoy your X-Men Origins Wolverine. Go ahead.
I'll watch
Go ahead.
I'm sure there's something else I could find that was really better than both of them combined.
All right, G.I. Joe Retaliation. How about that?
I'd rather watch Retaliation than watch Quantum of Solace.
You're talk about a movie that's gonna fucking put you to sleep. Are you fucking kidding me? You absolute monster. Wasn't I texting you when I rewatched those like last year? Because I was getting ready for Snake Eyes and I was watching it and I was dumbfounded that movie is like 4 hours long. At least it feels like it.
It does feel a little long. I'm not gonna lie.
It has 5 acts, at least.
It is not the greatest film.
No, it's not, and I should love that movie because it everything about that seems like the kind of movie I should love, and it makes me angry. I get rageful thinking about it.
I haven't watched it in a very long time, so I couldn't really talk to you well about it. I think I saw it when
I
it came out, and I haven't watched it
genuinely
since.
just want to like tape your eyes open and force you to watch it without blinking.
Well, maybe we'll have to do it. Maybe we'll do the G.I. Joe series at some
Man,
point, or
dear Lord. I
the
mean,
Hasbro series. We'll do the Transformers and G.I. Joe.
no. Let's calm the fuck down. I'm going nowhere near the Transformers franchise.
Unless somebody asks for it as a patron. Then we can't
Don't fucking put that out there. Don't you do that. Don't look, man. Every time I start trying to rewatch those movies, I make it about halfway through the third one, and the third one's better than like the second one. But even halfway through, I'm already checked out, and I want it to be over.
I very happily actually avoided them. I watched the first one. I think I'm pretty sure I watched the second one, and then I didn't watch any other ones after that.
You need to watch the third one because Leonard Nimoy is in it, and they keep giving him lines because he's spoiler alert, he's the villain.
Right. I remember reading that.
Yeah, but they keep giving him lines that Spock would say in Star Trek, but it's coming out of a fucking Autobot Decepticon. It's one of the most wonderfully batshit weird things that's ever happened.
That's fair.
Also, the 3D in that movie was fucking incredible.
Okay.
Patrick Dempsey has no reason to be in the movie, and it's hysterical because he's another one of the humans. It's like every time I watch Doctor Who and you see someone trying to reason with the Daleks, and you just know. You're like, why are we doing this? We know what happens. We know why we're doing this because it's the first time someone's ever watched Doctor Who, and they don't know that the Daleks are eventually going to be,
right,
the thing. But it's just very funny to go back and watch it, and I'm like, why is this happening? And why is Patrick Dempsey dude, John Malkovich is in that movie. Francis McDormand's in that movie. Like that movie
blows my mind.
Cast. Yeah.
Because I can't remember, has Francis McDormand ever done anything that was like that blatantly like franchisey? Like
I off the top of my head, I would have
does like good performance. He usually does like really great like movies, like really great directors, really that kind of thing. I can't think of anything that she's done that's because that remember when I saw that cast, it's like that just seemed out of left field. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I can imagine Malkovich does a lot of both. He does great performance. He also does some weird, random,
Red too,
fun, random stuff. Yeah. So like that made sense. But Francis McDormand, like really, Francis McDormand is in this.
And as far as I'm aware, it's not like she needed a house or anything. Like her and whichever Cohen she's married to, they got to be doing pretty well for themselves, right? Like
I'm gonna look her up. I want to see if there's anything else I can imagine.
Kim Jong is in that one too.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see, maybe
that movie has a weird cast.
It does a weird.
John Goodman's in it.
She did do one other movie that I would classify as definitely not a good movie. Definitely more of a attempt to be pop culture-y. She did Eon Flux.
Oh, I forgot about that. To be fair, though, that was being treated as like a bigger deal at the time.
Yeah. Right.
Like it is much blatantly less than joining a third Transformers movie.
True. Oh, she also did do a voice. I don't know if this counts, but she did do the voice in Madagascar 3.
That could, I guess, but also
that always feels different too. Just doing a voice when animated, that seems like an okay thing.
That one's also co-written by Noah Baumbach.
That's true. That's a fair point.
Like that's a weird movie in and of itself.
Yeah, that is a strange thing.
Brian Cranston's in that movie too.
Yeah, that's a good bit.
Why are we talking about Madagascar?
I don't know.
How did we get here? How did I am masterful at getting us off track and off topic. However, this is a new level even for me.
Should we, instead of trying to segue, try to find a way back, should we just kind of cold cock it here? And
no,
say, all right,
absolutely done. I'm gonna find a way around this.
Okay, all right. I'll let you. I'll give you a little slack.
Has Tony Todd ever been in a Transformers movie?
He seems like
Even
he
in
would
voice work,
be.
right? Like,
He seems like he would be because he seems like he's in everything at some point or another. Like I'm never surprised to see Tony Todd in a movie, like no matter what movie it is.
yeah, dude, I just really like Tony Todd.
I do too.
I
I
just
really do.
really do, and he's the kinda guy that I just look forward to him popping up in things, and I'm a little shocked right now, like, looking at it. He's
Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
Oh, there we go. You know what? Guess
He is the
what, guys?
Fallen.
So, here's my segue. Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, as much as many of us try to forget that that movie exists, it does feature the great Tony
Tony
Todd,
Todd.
who voices the Fallen, shockingly enough. Tony Todd, who is also in Final Destination 2,
Destination
which we are
2.
talking about tonight here on Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film. We are talking about the 2003 sequel, which it shocks me that it took them 3 years, by the way.
Surprising, because Final Destination was a pretty solid hit back in
Yeah,
the day.
right. So it takes them 3 years. David R. Ellis came in to direct this one.
Right.
And I'll say, like, it's just kind of interesting that he was a really fun director, actually. I quite liked David R. Ellis. He was one. Actually, you know what? We talked about one of his movies earlier.
Snakes on a Plane.
I referenced it earlier. Couldn't make that up if I tried to. But it's just kind of interesting that he came on to direct this.
Right.
And they decided to try to find a way to, like, make a sequel that was tied to the first one. Because when we get to the next one, as you'll find out, it's very standalone. It has nothing to do with Final Destination other than
I vaguely remember that. Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
So this one is actually, like, tied to it, to the point that they was selling it as Ali Larter being the lead. She's not the lead of the movie. She's in the movie quite a bit, but she's clearly not the lead.
Right. And actually, as one point I was gonna bring right from the get-go is that this is really the time where she was, like, poised. I'm not sure what happened in her career necessarily, but
she retired.
Did you but why did she retire though? Is there any reason why?
She was it was just family. She decided to focus on her family.
Because she always, I mean, I don't, maybe this is a misconception, maybe it's just me watching at a younger age of her. It always felt like she was like on the cusp of like superstardom.
And you're not wrong, because remember, right around this time, she does Final Destination, she does Jay and Silent Bob, and she lands Heroes.
Varsity Blues and Heroes.
Yep. Huge.
Mm-hmm.
Heroes was huge for the time. Like, I don't think people realize how big Heroes was, especially that first season.
Oh, that first season was the zeitgeist show of 2006. It was the most talked about.
It was that and Lost.
Yeah, really easily that. I mean, it's amazing how quickly it went downhill after that. But
writer's strike once again.
That's what it was. Yeah, absolutely.
Writer's strike totally killed that show, like, between seasons. And I like season 2 more than most people.
Yeah, me too. I was okay with season 2. It just went further down. I think, or was I
thought Heroes Reborn was real bad though.
What was which? I'm trying to remember what the season was. Season 2.
Season 2 is the villains one, where it has like the Elseworld stuff or like future stuff involving Peter, where it turns out he might be a villain.
Yeah, what was the one with the twins, or the twins from like, say Mexico or something? They were like,
that's probably season 3 or 4, because I really don't remember it at that point.
Because I remember hating that stuff. Yeah, circus stuff. I remember the circus stuff. There's I remember what it was like. I kind of like they got bogged down. Oh, Villains was actually season 3.
But the Peter stuff starts in season 2, because that's where it's like the assassination thing. If I'm remembering correctly, like someone may or may not have killed his brother. It's been a minute since I've seen anything past season 1.
I kind of want to do a rewatch at some point, because I do miss some of it. But
every time I do a rewatch, I get about halfway through and I just kind of tap out and I never go back. I should fix that.
Because I feel like it's always had some moments, and I think it'd be better in a binging state than it was in week to week at that point. Yeah, it was Daniela. Okay, so Daniela Ramirez played Maya Hera. I think that's the one I was talking about.
Maya, yeah.
Season 2 and 3 and 4. I don't know. Either way, I'm getting off it. Season 1 was definitively by far the best.
Yeah.
And
Heroes was great. for
Yeah.
one season is what we're getting.
We are getting off the topic of Final Destination 2 already. How do we do it? It's like we don't want to talk about this movie or something.
No, and it's
we
funny
do.
you say that because I do
I do too.
Here's what I'm going to say
Alley
up top,
Larder.
and I'm
That's
going
what
to
it was,
keep this
Alley
on
Larder.
track somehow. It's
Okay.
not going to happen, but I'm going to try.
Okay.
Final Destination 2 is such a step up from the first one, which is funny when I say that because I gushed over the first one last week. I really liked the first movie. But the second movie takes the concept, and I think it becomes the thing that you were complaining about last week. Because it gets rid of a lot of the cheesier elements of like him knowing who's next, him getting like seeing names and stuff. All that stuff is kind of jettisoned in favor of a storyline that's actually super interesting about what happens when because these people lived, them living stopped the deaths of other people who were also supposed to die, which is such a great twist when you realize that the reason that these people are all being chased by death again, you think it's the freeway, which it kind of is. They all stop. They all get stopped from dying in one of the craziest accidents ever put on film. Dude, the disaster in the opening of this movie is fucking remarkable.
It is fucking awesome. I will say we're going definitely way tangent in here. We should go back, but like I will agree that opening sequence actually is probably the best part of the movie, and like it's one of my favorite parts of the entire series from what I've seen. Like there is nothing like that opening sequence was just amazingly crafted, designed, well shot, like choreographed, everything about it. And it takes a long time, but it like you don't care because you just watch it unfold, and it's like this is fucking good. This is good shit here.
Yeah. So that stuff is. I'll say this too. Every one of the big disasters, in my opinion, is kind of that well handled. Even the airplane sequence. You talked about that last week. You really liked that sequence.
I did.
Very similar. And it's funny that this one has a similar, interesting person on fire effect.
Yep. It does. Same. I noticed that.
But what's interesting is that the way they tie this movie into that, and this idea that it opens up to now we're dealing with death personified again as this slasher.
Right.
But I like that it's not as random as it feels.
Right.
Because they put this idea that these people were all affected by the people who actually were supposed to die in the first one.
Right.
And that to me is like the cornerstone building block of doing something really smart in trying to move forward when I've never really looked into what happened with Devon Sawa not coming back. It's kind of a bummer that he's killed off screen. So
yeah, I was surprised he was kind of killed off screen like that. I feel like
you almost could have done a Friday the 13th with it if you had really wanted to kill him, right?
Yeah,
you could have shot an opening that is exactly the thing that we're talking about in the Friday the 13th movies. They were famous for bringing the final girls back,
right,
to kill them,
to get killed off. The next thing we could have the. Although I guess part of it was, do you want to do that or do you want to wait? And that would spoil. I mean, theoretically, that kind of does that spoil Ali Larder's intro?
Not necessarily. You know why? Because what you do is you have them together. You do it, then you cold cut, and we don't know what happens to her.
Right. I guess. I mean,
but
I do love her introduction in this film. Like
I do too. Don't get me wrong.
Having her in the beginning of the film might wreck that for me, even if you don't know what happened to her. I kind of like not knowing, and all of a sudden she kind of comes back into play, and then all of a sudden there she is.
Yeah. Look, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but it just feels weird because Sawa is so specifically the focal point in the lead of the original.
Right.
That to kill him off like that just seems kind of backwards.
It does. Although I will throw out there, I'm going to pitch out something to you, and maybe you'll disagree with me or agree with me. I almost feel like his performance wouldn't have worked as well in this kind of film, in this version of the film.
It depends on how it's done. right?
It does, it does. But I'm looking at how he treated Final Destination 1 and what Final Destination 1 was compared to what Final Destination 2 is. I will say this, like, my one sentence review from this, if I want to put anything out there, I think it'll spark a lot of our this conversation is gonna end up going. Because I don't know where I still don't know where I land on this film for a couple of reasons.
Jesus Christ, man.
I do like this film a lot. I do like this one better than the first one, I'll say that. It's an amazing thing how much tone and self-awareness can boost a film because that's what this film does so much better than the first one. It's got a definite sense of more of a sense of self-awareness, and it just has this tone, the tone that the first one was missing for me. Well, I said the first one was trying to be too serious about it. This one doesn't try to be too serious about it as much. And when it does, it kind of plays with things here and there. But I gotta say, it's funny enough that there's some egregious story plot line things that are very confusing or very like misguided that threw me for a loop that if they had been in the more serious attempt would completely derail the movie for me. But because the tone is so good, they're much more forgivable and I kind of let them go. There's a couple of storyline things I'm kind of like, you're not really following your own rules to a degree, or they're a little. There's kind of like a little bit of a. Oh, I see where you're kind of going for, but we'll get there as we get towards like more towards the end of the film. I guess is what I'll leave that little teaser out there. But I'm interested to see where I end up. I don't have a grade in my head yet. I do like it better than the first one though. So let's go from there. But tone. My main point is the tone is like this is a good film that knows what it's trying to do and it succeeds at what it's trying to do for the most part.
I won't lie to you. It's very interesting hearing you say all that because then every time I rewatch this, I almost always forget that Michael Landis is in this movie.
Yes.
And anyone out there who just heard that name went, who?
Ooh.
He was Jimmy Olsen in the first season of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. And I loved watching that show growing up. Dean Cain was standing. And it is so weird to me to see him in this. And I think, to your point, if he can be in this movie, because his performance is not terribly far off of what Saw was doing in the first one.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
The character is also very different.
Yes.
Which means that he serves a very different function.
Right.
But I think the thing with this movie is everyone kind of knows what movie they're in. Like I said with the first one, I think everyone knew what movie they were in, but it was a different movie tonally. This movie is the movie that you wanted tonally out of the first one.
Correct. And what most of the actors in the first one wanted as well. I thought that's the movie that they wanted to have made too. The director didn't quite understand it.
I disagree with your assessment still.
I know you do. But...
I disagree with your assessment, sir. I think that this movie is one of the standout sequels of just about any slasher franchise. This might actually be the pinnacle of this franchise, which means that it's capping early, unfortunately. But
sorry, Brandy.
And I don't mean that in a like derogatory way. It's just so good, and it's just so fun, and it's just so easy to watch. I guess is the best way to describe it. Which is funny that David comes back and he does the fourth one, and spoiler alert, that is easily the worst of the franchise.
Okay. All right. I don't remember that one at all. So I don't think I ever watched it, to be honest with you.
I'm not sure you're going to like that movie that much. There's some interesting ideas. I think it is easily the weakest film in this series.
Okay.
Which, going back to this one, makes this one that much better. Because I have seen it go completely off the rails under the same director.
Okay.
So it's just kind of funny to go back to this one. It's like, man, nah, at least this one's a banger. And I don't care about most of the characters in this one, like I do kind of with the first one. But part of the thing with the first one is a lot of the actors are a little more recognizable to us. Again, Ellie Larder, Devin Sawa, you got Sean William Scott, like Tony Todd, even the girl that gets hit by the bus that is referenced in this. She's one of those actresses who would pop up and stuff on like CW, and
Right.
like they're recognizable. You see them and you kind of know who they are.
Right.
Everyone in this is a little less recognizable,
Right.
but that's okay because they're also arguably not nearly as important. Although I know that there's going to be someone who screams at me who listens to this and goes, "But the blue fairy from Once Upon a Time is in this." Yes, I am aware. I know she is in this. Thank you for pointing that out. One of the great things about this movie too. I'm just going to keep talking.
You go right ahead. You go right ahead.
One of the great things about this movie is that the deaths are so different compared to the deaths in the first one. And it kind of actually goes away a little bit from the everything around you is like it does it once really, really well, which is the guy at the beginning who wins the lottery.
Yeah.
And everything in his apartment, everything he does, you're waiting for something really bad to happen.
Right.
And then something really, really bad happens with a fantastic finale.
Oh, yes. Just when you think you might get away kind of thing, and like,
Yeah.
oh, no, you're not.
Oh, no. But this kind of doesn't do that as much, and it makes a lot of the deaths actually really surprising.
Yeah.
In
No,
a
I
very
agree with that.
fun way.
Yeah. The whole thing was
Including
like
the blue fairies.
include the blue fairy. Yeah, they were much quicker, almost in a way. Kind of feel
Mhm.
like a lot of times they kind of like just kind of also didn't happen. There's not as much of a build up to these ones, except for that first one. But I liked how that happened, though, in a way.
Me too.
And also they felt like more. I don't know the
They're
word I'm
tense.
looking for. They are, yeah. The tension is definitely there.
Yeah.
Much better than the first film was in that case. All of them are great. The dentist one, or the whole dentist thing. Where again, they did a lot of like you think they're getting away, but they're not. Like the whole dentist, the pigeon thing, and all of a sudden they make it down to the ground, and then the kid is crushed.
Dude,
That was a great fucking.
Okay. So, for those who don't know exactly what we're talking about, if you've never seen the movie and you're just listening to us because reasons, thank you, number one. But
thank you.
I also, what are you doing here? Godspeed, I guess. That sequence so there's this great sequence in a dentist office, and the kid almost gets choked to death because the gas gets turned on to the point that he's passing out, and this pufferfish stuffy type thing falls down his throat, and then the assistant walks in and finds him and like pulls it out and gets him out of there, and he lives.
Right.
And the actual hero of the movie, AJ Cook, who plays Kimberly, she and Thomas, played by Michael Landis,
Right.
they're trying to get all the survivors together because they're trying to keep everyone safe.
Right.
And they realize that this kid is next. It's this kid and his mom. And they're like, no, don't go anywhere near anything. And they're like, the pigeons. And the
She saw the vision, the pigeons. You got to make sure the vision of the pigeons is the intimacy of where they're trying to get him away from anything with pigeons involved.
And they see these pigeons. And they realize what's about to happen, but they don't know exactly what's about to happen. This kid goes running into, like, it's like a John Woo movie all of a sudden. There's just pigeons everywhere, and he goes over and he starts trying to scare them and like spook them. Because also, I'm pretty sure that this kid is actually like 15. I felt really weird that the mom like went into the night before and like tucked him into bed and like gave him water and kissed him on the. What a weird sequence. Anyway,
it felt a little off. Not gonna
lie. So it wasn't just me. Great. So he's chasing these pigeons, and the pigeons knock a bunch of sensors on a crane, and this crane is holding a glass panel. And this glass panel, you're thinking maybe this thing is gonna like fall and like slice him in half or something. Oh no, this thing just falls straight on him and smashes him. And it is like the most unreal great body effect where it doesn't cut, like the camera sits and you see his body crumple underneath this thing as it splatters.
Yeah, it is amazingly shot, amazingly well done. I don't know if all the budget went into that or not, but it was well worth it. I remember going, "Ooh," when I
Every
saw
time.
that one.
Every time I see that one, I giggle a little bit inside. I shouldn't enjoy it nearly as much as I do,
We're
but
sick
it is
fucks.
fucking hysterical.
We're sick fucks, but it is
Probably.
fucking hysterical. Oh god, it's so good. It's so funny. It's so well done. And that's what I mean. Like compared to like again, I shouldn't do this maybe, but I compare it to like the strangling death of the first one. It's just the deaths were on just a different level in this film. Uh
Because this, it's the, again, I think I said it in my review. It's funny that this movie feels so restrained compared to the first one because the first one is such like a, I don't know, flamboyant's not necessarily the right word, but it's so campy.
yeah,
Campy is
campy
the
is a
word
good
I'll
word.
go with.
Campy is a good
Campy
word.
is the word I'll go with. It is so campy, right?
Right.
This one is not, but the deaths are heightened,
Yes.
which is hysterical. So it's restrained, but it's not,
Right.
because this one is so much more in your face and so much more violent, and so many more people die in this one.
Oh yeah.
Again, just look at the disaster alone.
Right.
The
Disaster
disaster
alone.
is, I will never go near a log truck in my life.
Yeah, and it was that traumatizing. Same thing. If I see, I'm like, "Ooh, I gotta step away from that shit."
It,
Um,
it's remarkable how much that has damaged an entire generation of us.
yeah, I totally
This
get it.
movie 20 years later is still, I should be in therapy
Effective.
for this movie, for the damage that it did to me, of wanting to, for just driving.
Right.
I actually still, to this day, when I drive, even if I'm around like semis or anything, I start to get like, I'm going to back up a little bit. I don't want to be next to you. I want to be as far away from you as possible because I don't know if that thing's about to flip or something.
It is funny, I gotta say, as much as we both praise the opening, um, it's funny how, like, the build happens with that, like, where she's given so many clues that something's about to
Yeah,
happen, and it's so over the top and
I love
campy,
it.
and that's what I love about it is because, like, if it had been a little bit less, it'd have been like, "This is annoying," but because it knows it and, like, doubles down on the joke about it in a
Yeah,
way, like, it keeps going and going, and
my
I also
favorite.
wanna throw out there, by the way, God, I was hoping I didn't remember a lot. I remember a little bit of this film, but I didn't remember a lot. She clicks on the radio, we get the Highway to Hell. I was
Yeah.
hoping that was gonna be the John Denver of this one. We're gonna have multiple
Oh yeah.
scenes of Highway to Hell, but we didn't, unfortunately. But that was that was part of the opening to me that worked. It's just
My favorite is when she goes past the kid who has the trucks and he's just hitting them together in the
yeah.
car. Like he's this kid with a toy cars and he's slamming them together, and you're like, wow, we're really phoning this one in, aren't we?
Right?
Like we're not even trying to hide what's about to happen.
Kids in
Um,
the bus saying, "Was it pile up or pile up or
pile on. No,
pile
yeah,
up, pile up?" I think it was pile up.
yeah, it might be pile up or pile on, or it's like something. It's something involving a crash,
Yeah.
essentially.
Again, you're like, "Why are these kids chanting that? Like, it doesn't even make any sense." But like, okay, sure, we'll go with it.
This movie is hysterical
It is
for that
funny.
alone.
Yeah.
Um, I'll also say this: the higher body count would have worried me with anything else, but this movie like so effortlessly uses it to its advantage
Mm,
because for a 90-minute movie, there's very little downtime. There is a
yeah.
death like every 5 minutes, it feels like, once the crashes like really happened. No one is safe.
No one at all. It's true. You don't even like the leads don't feel like they're safe at all. That's the thing.
Yeah. Which leads me to, I love Ali Larder in this movie because I like that Clear coming back meant that you had a returning survivor,
Right.
which is rare for this type of movie. But you also have now given it extra stakes, right?
Right.
Because your hope is she can survive a second final destination.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
You know what I
It
mean?
what's
You're
funny
adding
about it
that.
yeah. What's funny about it to me is, like, the way it was done, it didn't seem like I mean, I guess You mentioned before it took 3 years to happen, which maybe that's why it felt like, but, like, this introduction to her, it felt like a legacy sequel from 20 years previously.
Right.
That's the way it was handled in a way. It's like, we just saw our last movie, it shouldn't be a big introduction, but yet it is, and it works so well because 'cause you're, like, excited to see her. "Oh, cool. Alright, cool, clear. Great."
Yeah. It's also interesting that for being 3 years later, it is set only a year after the events of the first movie. And
Yeah.
so all this is also happening on the anniversary of the plane crash. But again, the reason it ends up working is because, as it turns out, all of this is tied to the plane crash.
Right.
That I keep coming back to it, and this is the big bow for me.
Right.
They so well make that little move into it, and,
Mhm.
like, that idea that because they survived there, it screwed up these people who were supposed to die at the same time in other places, and I love that mechanic. I just think it's so interesting because it just feels different. We hadn't
Mhm.
really seen something like that. Um, it just plays differently to me
It's a
because of
great
it.
it's kind of a cool world building thing in a way because 'cause we're learning
Yeah,
more about the lore, and that works in this film for the most part until it doesn't. There's times later on where it doesn't work as well, as far as again, and not specifically the death plan, but, like, the lore itself kinda thing, kinda just gets too much contrivances in its way. But it's hard to say because it's so over the top, like, why do you care? But there's sometimes that you get so much to take me out. Like, one example, for example, and maybe I have these conversations with you, and sometimes you point something out that I met, or you kind of like will twist it in a way. I'm kind of like, okay, I'll accept it better now. One of the things I had a problem with, I'll say, I'm gonna get it right out of the way here. After they all get to, um, it's his apartment. It's cops
yeah,
Michael Landis' apartment, or whatever, and they're trying to put everything away. And you have that one dude, Rory, who is such a first of all, what a fucking weird dude. The whole elevator sequence with him, like, when he
yes,
goes up and starts, like, putting this shit next to the guy. I mean, I guess he's on drugs and that's what it's supposed to represent, but
yeah,
it's so weird.
yeah, it's a
So
weird
weird.
scene. I don't love that scene, but that's fine.
But so he gets in there, he goes into the closet, and you see him, like, look at everything, like, "Oh, fuck," and everything else, and then something falls, yada, yada. And then he sees in the shadows the claw guy. And I'm like, so we can do this now? Like, the whole film is predicated on her having the visions and stuff, and that I buy into because that's the lore. But all of a sudden, for no reason, it's never mentioned again. It's never explained again. They see the claw in the shadows. This guy does, who is no one as far as he's just one of the people who are gonna die. He has no special things, and all of a sudden, like, oh my god, they're gonna get killed by claw people next because I saw a shadow.
Bloodworth says that you need to look for every sign.
I, I
I know, it's a stretch, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you,
That
and
part
that
annoyed the fuck out of me, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's a whole
no, it's
point down
totally
from that
fair. I
movie.
don't like that part either, but I also the movie sets it up because the other returning character from this is William Bloodworth, played by Tony Todd,
The great Tony Todd, and he's
the
phenomenal in
great
this as
Tony
well.
Todd, who I love his scene in this. I actually like this scene for
Better than the
him
first one.
more than the one in the first one because
Me
this
too.
one I felt like uses Todd so much better.
Well, because Todd understands the movie too. He understands the movie he's
Yeah.
in, and again, he tried to make that same type of performance in the first one, and it didn't work as well because of the first one's tone. Not that he worked well, but it works better in the film that has the proper tone. If that makes
Well,
sense.
I also think that because the moment that they walk into the moratorium again, and he was like, "I've been waiting for you guys," essentially,
Yeah.
and he even says, he's like, "Clear, good to see you again," and she's like, "No games, stop screwing around." And they realize that he has, um, what's his face on the slab,
Right, the lottery guy.
yeah, the lottery guy, whose name escapes me once again, but that's okay.
He's very unimportant overall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's very unimportant. But I just kind of love the whole way it plays out. And then when he drops Kimberly's name and she goes, "Wait, how did you know my name?" And you start to realize he might actually be Death.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, that passed through my mind during the first film in a way, but in this film, it really was kinda like, "This is something more. There's definitely something more," and I like how they lean into that in this one.
Yeah. But I also like that he's kind of the key to all of them, like, surviving in some
Right.
capacity, because he's the one who tells them, like, new life is the thing that might save you.
Right, which is something I like too because if you believe that he is death, it works so much better.
Right,
If you don't and you just believe he's like crazy old kooky guy who has some weird knowledge, it's just kind of like okay, dude, that's fine. You're a weird dude. But yeah, because he does feel like he's a little more supernatural himself, it's like you have to get in your head. You're like, okay, well, why would death help them if
right.
death is trying to correct the pattern? But I feel like in a way, it's that death is like it does try to correct its own pattern, but it's not used to like dealing with individuals, dealing with humanity like at such a personal level. That's almost like fun for him to kind of like,
Yeah,
okay, I kind of
yeah.
like these people. I'll give you a shot.
And I'll say this, because it's not really a spoiler or anything, but Tony has a voice cameo in
Yes,
3,
I remember
which
hearing that.
just to me leans more into
Okay,
this idea that he is death personified. You know what I
okay,
mean? Like, because we don't see him, but I like this idea that even though it's a voice cameo, but it's a voice cameo in a very specific sequence
okay,
that makes me go, "Oh yeah, so he's definitely death." Like,
gotcha.
I just find it kind of fun.
Yeah, I like that too. Um, but yeah, Tony Todd is great in this movie, and he's definitely one of the highlights. And him and Ali Wheeler back and forth work very well. But it does he does, but unfortunately, it's his things that kind of also make it fall flat, though, not through any fault of his, but because it just feels so weird later on. Like that, like the shadow sequence like I mentioned before, it just bothers me still. You can and as much as
It's a dumb sequence, though. I mean, I'm not even gonna make excuses for it.
follow your own logic. Like in a film like this, you don't need to have everything work out like completely. Like you can be vague about things and like let things go, and you buy into it because it's the kind of movie it is. When you go against your own flow and just introduce something and then never kind of refer to it again, it feels weird and like I just didn't like it. But I
No,
won't go on anymore. But
no, but it's a totally fair assessment. Like, I would never grill you on that. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't.
right,
I get it. It just doesn't. But I love too that Clear is the one who realizes that everyone's dying in a reverse order in this.
yes. I do
Um,
like that as well too. Her whole introduction is great. Her whole introduction is perfect, by the way. We kind of mentioned it once or twice, but we should actually get into that
yeah,
before
yeah, yeah.
when you find out she's in the psych center and you have that big long walk with the nurse. She's like, you can't have this, you can't have that, can't have this, can't have
It's like
cell
you can't
phone,
have your
can't have
cell phone,
that.
no belt,
No
no,
belt, no buckles,
yeah,
no anything. And I'm like, oh wow, she's that dangerous? She's like, no, that's because she doesn't want that in there. You're like,
no. She
oh
thinks you're that dangerous.
yeah, since you're that dangerous. That's right. And you're like,
Yeah,
oh, okay. So this is the Claire we're dealing with now. And you're like, oh, that's cool. Okay, that's
yeah.
cool.
And then the other line I really liked in that, she was like, "How long is she going to be in here?" And she goes, "Well, it's really up to her. She
Well,
chooses to be here."
yeah, yeah, it's her. She's voluntarily there, which is it makes it an interesting character. And what a weird choice when you think about it. Even like, so here's someone who went through such hell, and like is still wanting to be alive despite the tragedy she's been through, and so she's just gonna go to the extreme measure of. I have no other way. I don't know how to survive, so I'm just going to put myself in the only place that I could think of that I
A
can't
padded
die in
room.
a padded room and keep everything else away from me at that
Yeah,
point.
and it just works.
Huh?
And I think Larder is like particularly very good in this too.
She is. She's really good. She plays the role well. That's given to her because she's like it's a weird. Given that again, that's only 3 years. It's weird that she goes from like the clever sidekick ish kind of character to Devon Sawa in the first film to the mentor role in this film, and but she takes it with such a plum and just plays it exactly how she needs to play it.
Yep.
But
It's just so interesting to me. And I just think, like, again, it's kind of nice that she got so much to do because she kind of plays second fiddle, obviously, to
right.
Sawa in the first one. So
Hmm.
for her to get this like upped capacity, where again, she's not the lead. Kimberly's clearly the lead, but she
You wouldn't
really,
know that from the poster.
or from the fact that she's literally the first build
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
movie,
That's funny.
which is just very funny to me. But like, man, it just works. And the way that they kind of use the shadow of the first movie throughout, um, every time it's coming back to the fact that it's been like 1 year later,
Right.
or the way that you start to realize that all these characters had interacted with them in some capacity, where Burke was the cop who shows up to Sean William Scott's um
Um,
the train situation
cleaning
and
him up,
where
as he
cleaning
calls
him
it.
up,
Yeah.
right? Or that your favorite character, Rory, was
Yeah.
over in France
France
and
and
he
saw the
saw what
sign.
happened at
Yeah.
with the sign at the end of the movie. Like
Shakura
those
Smith. Yeah.
little things, the way it builds out and how they were, again, I've brought it up earlier, but the way that they were all affected by it is very interesting. And I kind of really dig that.
Yeah, me too. Totally, me too. I like because it adds to the lore. And again, you don't have to be specific with the lore in this movie. Any kind of lore expansion that is intriguing, you don't have to explain it 100%. It's just kind of like one of those kind of like, oh, that that's somehow that's connected. You gotta almost make up your own reason why it works or why it's connected because that's you don't need to know. So you don't need to have it spelled out for you.
No, and I love that even this one kind of throws that because, as Clear says, when they're trying to get the information from Bloodworth, and she goes, you told me before that there's this like death knows what it's doing, and he goes, no, death is random, and she goes, bullshit. You told me
Right.
there's a pattern.
Right.
Like you said this to me a year ago. There
Right.
is a pattern to all this.
Right.
But what is the pattern now? Because the pattern is broken.
Right.
Which means if the pattern's different now, it means we can break it. And I love that Kimberly even gets in on that. And she's like, this tells me that we can beat this. Like death
Right.
can be beaten.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I love that. I get excited thinking about that.
Yeah.
Just like in a capacity of this franchise, because I said it last week. One of the reasons I really like this series is because it is a slasher series, but
Right.
without the prototypical slasher being like front and center in a way that we see him or
Which, you know what
her
is
or
funny?
whatever.
I have to interject here because I remember that was one of my complaints about last
Yeah.
week. And yet, again, pardon me for sounding like a broken record, but what tone and does for a film, what tone and the setting does for a film, it feels the same way that this is a slasher without a slasher movie, but I don't feel cheapened out this time. Maybe it's because the deaths are much better. Maybe that's part of it.
It's probably a part of it, to be
But
honest.
like, it just feels more like what it's trying to. It feels more like this one feels like more like a slasher movie,
Yeah.
in the best way possible. So I like that this one works. I'm glad that I'm on board with you now in the slasher without a slasher voice
Right.
because of the tone.
And it works because death as a concept,
Yeah.
being so random or patterned or whatever, is actually like really haunting and really scary. And I think that this one really taps into that, especially because putting Clear into it makes it better
Yeah.
because there is something about stakes and having a character who has already gone through this trying to survive it that time, because you really do want to see them make it through to the other side no matter
Yeah.
what. Plus you're hoping that some of the new characters also make it to the other side.
Yeah, you care about these characters enough. I mean, especially the lead type characters, at least.
Right.
I did want to see Ali Larter make it again. I kind of wanted to have them buck the trend of
Spoiler alert, she does not. She
she
is
does
blown
not.
up.
She is blown up, and again another great fiery sequence in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that felt a little. No, I shouldn't say I felt cliched, but it was a little bit cliche. Her die was cliched. I almost wished that they could have bucked the trend and let her finish out the episode, the film as well. It would have made for a better ending, I think, with having her there. I get why they kill her to a degree. It's like the same thing as a story. It's a story archetype story type thing where the men. First of all, not only does these final girl slasher in the slasher get killed in the second film, but also the mentor character gets killed so that the heroes can live, kind of thing. And so it does make every sense in the world. I just don't like it.
No, it's fair. I'll say too, there's a lot of very good kills, as we've talked about. Oddly enough, one of my favorites is like such a weirdly small moment but
Mhm.
I really like it, and it's the Keegan Connor Tracy who plays Kat Jennings. She's the blue fairy that I kept referencing
Yep.
from Once Upon a Time.
Yep.
She gets there's this great sequence where they get in a car accident, and she's pinned in the car underneath a log, and the medics come to get her out, and they're going to cut this log down, and there's this piece of plastic next to her head from a pipe that had gone through the car, and it had already almost speared her,
Right.
only for the airbag to accidentally deploy, and her head goes right it goes that right onto the pipe. It
It's
is
so
it's
funny.
so shocking because it happens so fast and you're not prepared for it. You don't think it's gonna happen. And I don't even mean like as in a jump scare. This is one of the other times in the movie where they actually kind of set up that something might happen, and it goes completely the other direction.
Yeah. Well, it's the overzealous fireman too that like
Right.
kind of like it actually it almost takes me out a little bit. I was like, God, what a dumb fireman! Like, 'cause he has this thing like, first of all, she says, "Can you turn it down?" The guy, I love the response, like, "Yeah, I'll put it on the soft setting." Uh, that's not how
Yeah,
this works.
right.
But then he follows up by like pushing it in, and all of a sudden, he goes up. You're like, "Holy shit!" The fireman just killed
Yeah.
the poor woman. But I did like that death as well. It's kind of a cool one.
It
Um,
it really was. And then the funny thing is the setup that we see is not for her.
right,
It's it's actually for Rory.
right. Oh, and that was one of my favorite deaths. That was another really good death scene. I mean, it's something that we've seen before in films, like they kind of
Wire
get that
cutting
way.
through someone
Wire cutting
very
through
quickly.
someone, and then the body's kind of like, Darth Mauling, kind of
Yeah.
like the slice in half and falling apart. But it's still pretty effective overall for me because like the way it
Well, the
handles.
thing that's so effective about it is that it cuts him at a weird angle a couple of ways.
Yeah,
So it's not like he just gets cut in half. Like
right,
he loses a arm, and
right.
the body is like cut weirdly angled.
It like slides
It
off.
yeah, like and it slides off. It's just such a good moment,
Right.
and it makes me needlessly happy that because I don't. He's my least favorite, I think, of all of the. He's up there.
Yeah,
Although
I agree with that.
I'll say the pregnant woman drives me nuts. She might actually be my least favorite.
Yeah, well, she doesn't really get a whole lot, like, as far
No, which
as
makes her just awful.
yeah, no, I agree with that.
Like
By the way,
that moment
do you
when
think Kimberly went back and speaking of real quick of Roy, do you think Kimberly went back and deleted his porn?
no, absolutely not.
That's
But
actually the one part about Roy I did like was that line.
that was very funny.
You destroy
Uh
it.
no, here's how unlikable that character is though, right? Look, I get that your water breaks in the prison
Oh, her, okay, yeah.
and they're trying to protect her and all this stuff. The last thing you do to make me want her kid to live is that these people, she and the cop in this car collision that gets everyone into this situation to begin with, when the cars stop, the cop is going to get out to help them. And she goes, "You are not allowed to help them. You need to get me to a hospital."
Right,
And she goes, "They can help themselves, or these people that are showing up can help them. You help me."
right.
It is
Deputy
such an
Adams, by the way,
unlikable character trait for me.
played by genre vet Aaron Douglas, Battlestar Galactica, and all those things. So I like seeing him pop up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I agree. But the important part about that storyline too is this is me being a police dispatcher, fire EMS dispatcher. The idea that the sheriff, the deputy, panics so much at the water breaking, and there's no ambulances around. Like
Hmm.
the deputy should like be calling for an ambulance, not driving the van and driving her to the hospital in the van, in the girl's own stolen van. Like that goes against everything you ever learned. I got it's a personal thing. It's a movie. I'll let it go, but it did
No,
kind of
but I
throw
think
me off.
it's fair to throw you off, and I just think Isabel is a really terrible character.
She is
Just very unlikable, and that's
right.
it. It's really frustrating because she doesn't die either. The
No, she
most
doesn't.
unlikable character then survives. Which good, she has a kid or whatever, but it it's hard for me as an audience member to want an unlikable character to live.
Yeah, I get that. I totally get that.
You know what I mean? Especially in a horror
She's
movie.
also a useless character to do because, like, here's the thing. I'm gonna break into it now because we're talking about her. This is actually one of my other bigger problems here. It's getting towards the end of the movie, is that they put forth this idea. Tony Todd put forth this idea of new life
Right.
can help stop Death's plan or whatever it is. I so prefer the idea that they were putting forth, the idea that she was pregnant and if she had the baby, that everyone would be safe. And I almost wish they just kept to that because
Sure.
when they do the twist and all of a sudden the baby happens and it's still in danger, this whole like Kimberly decides that she sees like everything's all panicky now. She sees a clipping of like a new life on a board, and she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna have to go drown and die, and somebody will bring this. The nurse will bring me back, and that's going to be the new life that stops Death's plan." It just seemed like a much lesser version. The new baby coming into the world felt like a strong new life stopping death idea.
Don't disagree. However, I would put forth that I think both of them are sort of the acceptable answer.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? So new life on one survives, but new life for her, because in a weird way, we have heard about people who die and come back to life and they find a new lease on life.
But at the same time, let me throw it this way real quick though, is like it almost felt like that version of it is like, okay, so she cheated Death again.
Mhm.
So that makes it okay. Like, wouldn't Death want to like she double cheated him now in a
Yeah,
way?
but that time she actually dies. That's the difference.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
you die and you're resuscitated, you were dead.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying it's like perfect logic,
Right.
but dying and being resuscitated is different than you were supposed to die and then you didn't. Like
I,
I see what you're saying.
I will say, I think if it was developed better, it could have been developed better because it was just so like the baby isn't the answer, and all of a sudden she has this like quick old vision of like, oh, now I know what to do, kind of thing. And if they had found like a different way to develop it better, maybe it would have come off stronger.
Sure.
But again, I will let it go. I will definitely let it go. But it was again going like because the tone makes that a little bit more forgivable.
Right. Look, it's fair. Like I said, it's not necessarily the most sound of logic.
Right. Right.
It's not. I admit that.
It's a little weird, but
It's a little weird, but it works for me. That's ultimately the thing that matters the most is that I still had fun with it and it works.
yeah, I'm okay with it. So
I'm okay with it. I there's not a lot to talk about with this one at this point. I feel like we're covering a lot of the bases, but what is your favorite death in the movie?
I think it's got to be the window pane one.
Yeah.
I think that's got to be. I mean, I like a lot of them. I like the Rory. I actually mentioned Rory's death on my little note sheet. I'm like, I like the Rory death. I didn't. I like the Blue Fairy death. I like all the deaths, but I think I got to go back to the window pane just because that's the one where I looked and went, ooh, on every time. So that's got to be my winner.
All right.
What about you? What about you?
I don't know, man. I think Evan, who is the dude who wins the lottery, there's something about that death that is so ridiculous and so fun because the build to that death is amazing. So everything that can possibly go wrong in this dude's apartment starts to happen. He wins the lottery. He's making food and he puts something with metal inside the microwave without realizing it.
Right.
And then he puts a watch on and then his ring falls down into the sink drain. So he puts his hand down there to get it. But then the watch gets caught and he can't pull his hand out. And the thing starts to catch on fire out of the microwave. Like the fire alarm starts going off, but the fire is too intense. So the fire alarm melts. Like everything about this is worse and worse. Then he finally gets his hand out. He gets out. gets out the fire escape long enough for the apartment explodes, only to get down off the fire escape and have the ladder literally go through his head. Literally goes through his eye hole. It's a great moment. It's one of the coolest deaths I've ever seen in a movie.
Yes, it is. It is pretty fucking cool.
And it's funny because he laughs about it before it happens.
Right. I do have to ask. It's kind of funny. The garbage disposal part had me thinking of obviously of Halloween H2O because we watched that not too long ago and everything else. Is there a movie where like I can't remember anything off the top of my head where the garbage disposal actually works and slices up somebody's hand or whatever? Because it seems like it's a lot of times it ends up being the red herring than the actual.
I feel like there's a movie that I'm thinking of very specifically right now that I cannot see. That like I can see something that I think is very specific in my mind, but I can't pull it.
Yeah, same with me. Exactly. There's something I'm thinking of, and I can't picture it. But
it's like anytime you put a wood chipper into a movie, you know that they're going to use the wood chipper later. There's no reason I would bring that up about any movie that recently came out, but I was very happy that there was a wood chipper in the movie, and it was put to good use. It's like Fargo.
Yes.
Or which one of the Jackie Chan movies is it? Rumble in the Bronx? Someone gets. There's a wood chipper in another one of those.
I gotta be honest, a lot of, especially the American Jackie Chan movies, they kind of all flow together for me to remember which one.
That's just racist.
And it's not Jackie Chan itself; it's the movies, it's the plot, the plot of the movie.
I just like giving you shit. It was right there. Okay, you tossed it up. It was right.
It was right there.
That was really along the lines of they all look the same.
That's so bad. That's wow. I didn't even think that way.
You're the one who said it, not me.
I said the movies. The movies themselves. It's like Steven Seagal movies all flow together to me too. That's like those guys. It's the same type of. Like they're all the same basic titles, and they're just. I mean, Jackie Chan's are much better, but
don't even. Number one, how dare you put Steven Seagal and Jackie Chan even in the same sentence like that? Like that's just disrespectful.
It is, and I do feel bad about that. Actually,
you should feel bad. You should actually feel really bad.
But I understand why I did it though, in terms of like, because Steven Seagal movies are just forgettable, and they all flow together. Jackie Chan's are all great moments, but like Jackie Chan's movies are, especially the ones that were released in that same time period, Rumble in the Bronx time period. Like it was never the story that was the crux of these films. It was the set pieces, the action pieces, and everything else, and they were pretty interchangeable as to which one was in which film. Let's be completely honest there.
All right, fine. Fair enough.
Okay, fair.
Sorry, Dipper. Dipper does not agree with your assessment.
I guess not. That's okay, Dipper. I still love
you. He agrees with that at least.
Thank you, Dipper. Okay.
Yeah, but man, all things being equal, it's really nice coming into this one after like knowing you didn't love the first one.
Yeah.
And coming into Final Destination 2, and I told you last week, I was like, I think you'll like the second one.
Yeah, and you're right. You were absolutely right.
And I was right, because it's a much better movie.
I want to go back and revisit Final Destination 1. I almost, like, if I didn't have a million products in my hands, about like, I actually would almost go back and watch it again now after watching the second one, because I'm in the proper mood now also. Because, like, again, before we came from The Shining and Dr. Sleep, which are very different kind of iconic, but also really just good movies, versus this, which is a B slasher film, and just totally different kinds of viewings. So I will go back. I promise. I am Brandy. I promise you as well. When I will go back after watching, maybe after we do the Friday the 13th series, I'll go back and then watch Final Destination 1 right after that again, and we'll see. Maybe I'll actually increase my point rating on that one. But it did set me up for Final Destination 2, which I did approve of. Although one last thing, I did want to throw out one other minor criticism of it, and again, this is one I could totally pass through, but it was kind of one of those things that I did roll my eyes a little bit. We had to have the final "it's not over" ending kind of thing.
I was going to bring this up, but I feel very differently than you feel.
Okay, you do. I kind of like. I was like, I feel like it's funny because I love it and hate it at the same time. Like we have this thing,
fucking hysterical.
It is hysterical. And that's why that's the good part about it. Like, it's like, but I start thinking to myself, all I can think about after watching it, obviously, if you don't know what we're talking about at the end there, Kimberly and Burke have a picnic with the people who were at the accident and were helping them out. And at the accident, I should throw this out there. At the accident, Rory pulled back the kid from being killed by the news van who was driving through.
And he says, "What do you want to die? Keep your head on a swivel. Like, pay attention."
Right, exactly. And so we go back and they mention this too, because they obviously Kimberly and Burke were in different places and they didn't understand what was going on. And then they tell them the story, and they both have this like look on their face, like, "Oh, he got saved from death." Sure enough, the fucking grill explodes, killing the kid, and the arm comes out of the fucking mom's dinner plate or whatever. The way it's done is funny, but I had to be like, so anytime that anyone has ever like saved from death, you're fucking up death's plan now.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Every single time?
And I'm okay with that. As long as it means that the more Brians of the world die terribly in a movie like that, where I get to see, hey, you should go check on the grill. Boom!
Boom! Die, motherfucker!
I laugh every single time. I am a terrible human being, but I think it is hysterical.
It was hysterical. Like the only like negative I had about it is like it takes away from the idea of like, because there's so much setup in the initial events, like the airplane and then this highway accident. So then like having that little thing almost like tries to cheapen that. Like I almost feel like when it's a big event that people get saved from, that's when it fucks up with Death's plan. Not every little time that Joe Schmo almost steps in front of a truck but gets pulled back. It just seems like a cheaper thing.
Sure.
But
counterpoint.
As an epilogue, it's fucking hilarious. It's fucking
also, and counterpoint, it just goes to show the effects that people surviving these accidents continue to have on other people.
Yeah.
Right? True. Because the whole point of this movie is that if the people on the plane hadn't survived, the people that are in this movie would also not be alive. Right. So it's just, it's more about that continuing to ring through.
Yeah. Okay. It works enough. Enough. It's about that time we should feel about as we gotta rate this son of a bitch now.
Yeah, we do.
I asked last week, I'll throw it out there again. You gave the original Final Destination 7.5. I gave it a 6.5. Where do you fall on Final Destination 2?
Final Destination 2 gets an 8. I just think it's a better movie. I think it's more fun. I can't give it like high marks because I don't think these are great, amazing, fantastic horror slashers. They're fun as shit.
Right.
But it's not like changing the genre or anything at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just here to have fun and watch Brian get blown up by a barbecue by the time the movie's over.
And you have that fun. That's true. That's why
and it's 90 minutes. I'm in and out real fast.
So you went up 0.5 points from Final Destination 2. I went up a full point. I'm giving it a 7.5 myself.
Look at you. I'm so proud of you.
Because I had a good time with it. I did. Like, there's a lot of shit wrong with it. But again, I can forgive that shit because of the tone and the hysterical and the fun time I had.
Yeah.
So
I think that's fair, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not bad at all. There you go, Brandy. I hope Brandy's not as mad. Like, she called me out in the chat. Like, she's like,
she thought you were a bad person.
You are a bad person. Hopefully, I'm helping change her opinion of me this week.
If not, I mean, I don't really blame her for never forgiving you either.
That's fair.
Just throwing that out there.
That's fair, I guess. But that's it, guys. That's our show for this week. I appreciate you guys coming out and hanging out with us for this week. And hopefully, if this is your first time to PLD Project, please hit that like, subscribe, leave those comments. Talk to us. Tell us what we did wrong. Tell us what we did right.
Spotify also. We like you on Spotify, too.
Yes, we like you on Spotify and all of those wherever you can get your podcast feeds. We are a channel that has been growing. We've been seeing some upticks things recently, so I hope that continues. I hope it means you like us. You really like us.
I gotta say, apparently, according to Spotify, we were in the top 10 percentile of you people sharing our show.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. I don't know why.
You know what, man? I'm not gonna complain about it.
I don't question it either.
You guys are great, and I appreciate you wanting to share the show or pass it around and go, these fucking guys again. You got to hear what they said this time. Like I like to believe that's what it is more than anything.
I'm
People
okay
just
with that,
thinking
though.
that we're wrong. I think people are hate listening to us.
That could be. I'm okay with that because you're listening either way. That's what I
Yeah,
care
right.
about.
I mean, we're still getting your view, if you
Your
will.
view,
Like,
your yeah.
I'm not going to complain about it. I just think it's funny that that's how I like to envision it. It's like, God, you got to hear what these fuckers said this time. Like, that's how I look at it.
I agree. If you are hate listening to us, that's fine. Just don't leave us a review. I really appreciate you not leaving us a review if you hate listening to us, because that would not be good. But that's okay. Otherwise, you can find us at myself at Paul_Denuzio on Twitter, at PLD at Hive, when Hive is kind of coming back now from its little quick debriefing there. PJ, where can the folks find you?
Twitter, Instagram, Hive, PJ. Well, okay. Twitter, Instagram, PJ_Campbell, Hive, PJ Campbell, because they don't do underscores there, which really broke my mind. I'm still really not happy about that. But, whatever, I guess.
You can also join us on Patreon, patreon.com/PLD Projects, where that group chat we were just talking about it. We should be doing some stuff in December, hopefully a hangout. Maybe PJ and I can find some time to do some extra content on some of the things we were trying to do before. And I want to shout out some patrons, specifically Danielle Ramirez, Brandon Buckingham, Brady Parker, Jeff Alterman, John Lastrina, Kelly W., and the newest producer in my patrons, Partis, Jessa Dason, Party J. Thank you guys so much. We couldn't do it without you. Can't keep the lights on without you. We really, truly do appreciate you. That's it.
Don't speak for me like that.
Well, I truly appreciate you then. PJ, whatever. I won't speak for PJ because he's a little bitch right now.
How dare you? I just don't like people putting words in my mouth. I like them all well enough.
Okay, well enough. I like that. That's true.
Yeah. I like them all well enough, other than maybe Danny Ramirez. I'm not going to say why.
Well, you did call her out. That's true. But that's between you and Danny. So
she put you in that too.
She did. That's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
I was not happy with that either.
Exactly. See,
it was a little wrong.
Don't try to act all cool and act like nothing happened.
If you want to know about that, you can join the Patreon and join the Facebook chat, and you'll see exactly what happened between us and Danny Ramirez. But until next time, real quick, I'll just let you guys know we have great shows coming up. We got Class Action every week. We have Crown Jewels every week, where I take you through the journey of Queen. And I want to announce now our talk. I already pre-announced this before, but Maddie Gunner and I. What did I say?
I thought you said taco for half a second, and I was very confused.
No, I talked about it before. I would like a taco, though. I would like a taco.
I would love a taco.
Maddie Gunner and I will be debuting a new Star Wars show back on PLD Projects. We are returning. It'll just be a different name because some bastards like Kevin Smets and Frank Janish and Sean Sullivan and Brennan Hanna, they did me dirty. Not really. They basically bought me whiskey and asked me for the name. And I said, okay, sure. I wasn't doing a Star Wars show at the time. So now I have to figure out another name. I'm not going to take it back. I'm not going to be a person like that. But so that will be coming up when Bad Batch 2 debuts in January. So take a listen out for that as well. But that's it for now. Again, see us next week on Two Mediocre White Dudes on Film, where we'll be discussing Final Destination 3.
Trace.
But until next time, of course, never underestimate the power of mediocrity, because it is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Stay mediocre, dudes. Bye.
Bye.
PLD. PJ Campbell. 2 mediocre white dudes on film. Because frankly, we know you don't have enough of that in your life. So we're here to give you more. And without further ado, here are 2 mediocre white dudes.